we have this fear that the person on the other side is going to judge us, and therefore we don't ask the question because we don't want the judgment. The reaction and the
Yeah.
feelings and this person made me mad. No, they didn't. That
Hmm.
person did a thing that person does. The mad came from you. Authenticity, it, being authentically you is where it's at. But where most people come off the rails is they don't think their story's good enough.
Today on Success in Mind, we're joined by Jonathan Maynard, a true business builder who's earned his stripes not through theory, but by rolling up his sleeves and doing the work. Over the past decade, Jonathan has built and led multiple seven-figure home service companies, all without outside funding, just smart systems, leadership, and a whole lot of grit. Get ready for a conversation packed with hard-won lessons, actionable frameworks, and insights that can help you move your business forward no matter where you are starting from. Hi, Jonathan. Welcome to the show.
Hi, how's it going? Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here. I've been looking forward to this. So let's jump right in. You have built multiple seven-figure businesses without any outside funding. So what was the biggest mindset shift that you had to make to move from grit-driven hustle to sustainable, scalable growth in your business?
Looking at things from an internal versus external perspective. So for me, I always thought that it was stuff out there. It was the leads, it was the employees, it was everything outside of me that was the thing that was causing my business to either succeed or fail. And for
Mm.
me, the biggest mindset change that I had to make was realizing that it's about really my internal state that drives that business forward. That it's the narratives that I build around these things, whether that's employees or whether it's about cash flow or things like that. The self limiting beliefs, the narratives that really dominated me. And once I figured that out and changed from, in psychology, they call an external locus of control to an internal locus of control. And I'd heard about that, but I didn't
Yeah.
realize that somebody could change. I thought that that was just a static thing that you were born with, that either you had an external or an internal locus of control, and that's just how it was. And then through really great coaches and mentors, was able to take that and then say, okay, no, it's really not about anything that's external. There are external factors, but the
Mhm.
thing that gives you peace and calm in it is how you handle it internally.
Can you give us like a little tidbit of how you made that shift to shifting from that external locus of control to internal? Like maybe one thing that you did that helped make the difference?
Meditation, believe it or not, is
Nice.
almost as woo-woo as that sounds. Because I wasn't a big, meditation person. I tried
Yeah.
meditating like a bunch of people like, "Oh, meditation's really great." And so I sat and I would just sit there for like 5 minutes and have some, like music going, and then I would just think the entire 5 minutes, just the same spiral going in my head and just thinking about,
Yeah.
I've got that bill to pay, I've got that employee to talk to, I've got that client to call back. That wasn't meditation. And so,
Mhm.
but that's how you start meditation, is realizing that your thoughts are just thoughts. You can't control them. They pop up. And then
Yeah.
what meditation does is it teaches you how to observe the thought, but not really let it get you emotionally involved. And you don't have to chase that rabbit. So you just go, that's interesting. And then you just quiet it back down and you're really focused on breathing and things like that. And I know it sounds absolutely wild and ludicrous, but that
Not
was
at
the
all.
thing for me that made the shift, that helped me just regulate myself.
Yeah. No, that's not for us here, that is not out there at all. We are good with that here. Is there a meditation practice or a school of meditation that you find really helpful for you, or do you just kind of go with whatever you feel in that moment? How do you do it?
So I have a mixed bag. So I
Okay.
use a lot of guided meditations. So I particularly have liked the ones that Joe Dispenza does.
Yeah.
I like his kind of way of framing it. And it's really just kind of letting go of the past so that your future can come alive is really kind of the crux of his meditations. And
Yeah.
So I like that. I also, on occasion, like this morning, I just did a session where it's just music and I just focus on breathing. And I do like either box breathing, which is where you're just going in for 4 seconds, you're holding it out for 4 seconds. And that just helps also regulate it. I like to change it up because I find that if I do the same thing all the time, I tend to get bored in it and then my mind starts to
Mhm.
wander. Even in Joe Dispenza's meditations, I found because I did them and I was doing them and doing and then all of a sudden one day I just didn't I could not concentrate and then that lasted for like 2 or 3 days and I was like this is weird. So then I changed and I went to just a silent one and it almost like reset my system. So for
Oh,
me, I
nice.
use a bit of a mixed bag depending on how I'm feeling.
Yeah, I love Joe Dispenza's meditations, and his work's fantastic. Do you have a favorite of his? I'm just curious.
I really like his morning meditation. It's a 20-minute
Yeah.
and he does one a morning one and an evening one. I like that one, and then his outside the box meditation.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, many entrepreneurs, they'll hit a plateau in their business, and especially after having an early success. How can they tell when it's time to shift from doing everything to truly leading? And then what would you say is that first step towards that transition?
Well, in my experience, I found that the thing for me was when I could not hold all the plates anymore. So in my journey, I have a service business. So at some point there's only a certain amount of phone calls that you can take and then service delivery, so you get involved in that and really it comes down to the first, I guess, venture that you want to go into is the thing that you don't like doing. So, for example, if you
Okay.
don't like sales, then that's when you start looking at, okay, hey, I need to hire somebody to do sales or fractional, have somebody help me with sales. And or maybe it's for example, I do not like the finance side, the administrative side. I'm not a detail person. So that was my first hire. I was
Same.
like, let me get somebody in here to do that. And so moving from that solopreneur to that leader was a bit of a difficult shift. Now, I did it fairly quickly in my business just because I had a business before where I was just a solopreneur and I had the mindset, okay, nobody can do this as good as I can do it. I had, some little part-time help, like just helping me with some things, but I always had to be there. I had to be the one that was doing the marketing, that was doing all the things. And then I
Mhm.
got burned out because I knew that employees were the answer to just help me grow the business, but I just didn't trust anybody.
Yeah.
I didn't think anybody would be able to do it as good as I could do it. And so I had to get over that first and realize that
Yeah.
yeah, people aren't going to do it as good as me and I have to be okay with that. But I also have to be okay with somebody might do it better than me.
Right. How did you get over that trust issue? Because I hear this so often with my clients is they just don't trust someone that they'll take care of it. And what did you do to overcome that?
I made a bunch of mistakes, so I trusted people too soon, and then it failed.
Yeah.
And so that will definitely put a hiccup in you. So you're definitely going to want to go, do I want to do this again? So the answer is yes, you do. But I have a framework now, and the reason that I came to this framework is because I delegated too soon. And if you delegate without proper instruction, that's abdication. So you're just abdicating something. You're just throwing your hands up and going, I don't know. Please let somebody else take care of this. Unfortunately, that's bad leadership, and trust me, I know because I did the same I did that, where it's just like, "Look, I this is a total blind spot of mine, but I need help." Now, there's nothing wrong in saying that, but you still have to have some sort of functional knowledge of how it works. So if you are the CEO, the founder, the person that runs your business, you really need to know how each section works. Now, you don't need to know the nitty gritty. For example, I don't know about cap rate and interest and all these financial terms that my bookkeeper knows or my CFO or my CPA knows, but at least I have some sort of fundamental understanding of the finance so that I
Right.
can kind of ask the right questions. If you try to delegate something that you don't understand, then that's where things tend to come off the rails. Because if you don't have a very foundational and clear understanding on how something should work, then you're going to have a very difficult time training that. And so at that point, then you're going to have to reach out. For example, for me, for finance, okay,
Mhm.
I don't have a degree in it. I took maybe a class in it in high school, maybe, and that was probably personal finance. And in college, all my math classes were all statistics and things like that. So you do need to find somebody that is a subject matter expert that just knows it. But the the good thing to do in the beginning, the thing that worked for me was bringing them on as a partner at first and then just asking them all the questions and not being afraid to ask the questions. And for me, that was another breakthrough that I had was being able to ask these people questions without feeling dumb, without feeling
Right.
stupid. Because the narrative that I was telling myself is, hey, I'm a business owner. I should know this. And it's going to be embarrassing if I go to this vendor and I start asking questions and go, what is lifetime value? What is cap rate? What does this mean? Can you explain it to me? Because we have this fear that the person on the other side is going to judge us, and therefore we don't ask the question because we don't want the judgment, and therefore we're never educated.
Yeah.
And that's how most people run their business, and it's scary, and it's how I ran my business for years. So I know because I was afraid, and I didn't know I was afraid. I just thought I should know this. I'll look that up later. Playing the big ego thing, and
Right.
then and then you're not getting the good information from your vendor partners, the people that should know this stuff inside and out, and they can help you so that you can ask the better questions. And yeah, for me that was the biggest change that I had to make in regards to that was just being willing to ask questions and be the expert of your business, but not the expert
Mhm.
in each little vertical or each little silo that you've got within your business.
I think that's so important. And I know, like, listening to you talk about this, I've been there where I've been afraid to ask my bookkeeper the question because I don't want to look stupid or embarrassed. But really, this is what we're paying these people for is for their
Mhm.
expert advice and to be able to ask those questions. And that's their expertise. That's bookkeeping is definitely not my expertise. But
For
it's that
sure.
ego game that we come up against of, well, then they'll know I don't know something. And if they know that I don't know something, what does that mean about me?
Mhm.
And really, I think it means that you're a smart business owner for asking the question.
But in the moment, it is so hard to navigate that because we're just so used to playing those type of ego games,
Yeah.
and it's crushing. And until you learn that, I don't know, I think you're going to struggle. I know I did. I struggled big time until I figured
Same.
that out.
Same. Absolutely. There's no better time to make your next big move than right now. Kajabi is the all in one platform trusted by creators, coaches, and entrepreneurs to launch products, grow audiences, and get paid. Right now, get 3 months of full access for just $99. But hurry, because this deal doesn't last forever. Start with the link in the show notes. This offer expires on May 23rd, 2025, and it's only valid for new Kajabi subscribers. Once redeemed, you'll be enrolled in an auto-renewing subscription of your choice. So if you're ready to turn your idea into an online business, make sure you jump in on this deal today with Kajabi. And P.S., this podcast is hosted on Kajabi. You could even start your own podcast there. All right, back to our show. Absolutely. And you mentioned that you have a framework now that you use when you're bringing in partners into your business to help you with things. So what does that framework look like? Can you give us sort of an idea of that?
Sure thing. So the first thing I'm going to look at in any kind of investment is one, is it productive? So does it actually work? I have I guess an idea or a thing that I carry with me all the time is I don't buy ideas.
Mm,
Okay. So if somebody brings something to me, it has to work. If a vendor is going to sell me a product, I don't want something that is just an idea because that
right.
unless I know it's an investment into that idea without saying that it's going to work. So I want to make sure that it is actually productive. The second thing is anytime I'm working with somebody, I want to make sure we have a values alignment because that is absolutely huge. And
Yeah.
just do research, start googling people and you're going to find out a lot about them. So once you find out that it's productive, that it actually works, and that you do have a values alignment, then you're going to look in and go, okay, what is the return on investment on this? So I also want to measure and see how quickly I can get that investment back. So, for example, if you're working with a marketing company and they're saying, "Hey, we want to spend $5,000 on ads, and it's $1,000 for our management fee," I'm going to ask them, "Okay, well, let's look at other clients that you've helped do this with. I want to see what that looks like. I want to talk to those clients."
Yeah.
And then the next thing that I'm going to look at is that company. What do they stand for? I'm going to go to their profile page. I'm going to start looking at what they're posting on their profile and make sure that there's a values alignment, because there's been so many, and I've heard horror stories of this. I've luckily never had this happen, to where they start endorsing somebody or they go into a partnership with somebody, and then they find out that that person believes something counter to what the actual other person believes. For example, if you're, pro this, they might be anti that, or they
Right.
could, like for me, I like to keep my business above board. I go above and beyond. I never want to have a customer or a client feel like they got, ripped off, or we didn't deliver on
Mhm.
our brand. So we're very conscious of that, and I'm very conscious of that. There are people that don't mind doing that, that don't mind ripping you off.
Yeah.
And you can tell if you just start digging in. So that's the next thing I do, is I dig in, and then I look
Okay.
at, how long is it going to take to get this investment back? What does this look like? So if it's a marketing partner, what are the measurables? What are the KPIs? I'm always looking
Mhm.
at metrics, because data doesn't lie. Our feelings they can deceive us, because there are
Yeah.
people out there that are really good at manipulating those feelings. Now, once you get to a point, you can see it coming a mile away. But in the beginning, especially as you're evaluating these things, I don't know if you're like I am, Terry, but I like to believe the best in everybody. I like to
Mhm.
believe that everybody's out to do their best and deliver what they say they're going to deliver. I didn't used to be that way. I used to be super pessimistic. But now, with this whole mindset shift and this change and this like inner peace that I now have, I
Yeah.
also have the feeling that everybody does. They want it, they're acting in their own best interest. Now I have to figure out, okay, is their best interest the same as my best interest?
Right.
And so you can really dig in and see, okay, is this going to pay off? Is the thing that they're selling me worth it? Is it going to move the needle in the way that I want it to move it? And that's kind of a buzzword right now, move the needle. Everybody's like, "Oh, is this going to move the needle?" And I don't know if a lot of people understand what that actually means. And so when you're looking at like a KPI dashboard, we use these all over our business. The needle is literally the needle on the dashboard metrics. So if we're going to move the needle of income or anything like that, I want to make sure that the thing I'm buying is going to do that, is going to accomplish the goal. And
Nice.
you don't know if it does that until you do your research. So you can't depend on those feelings in a really good sales pitch, because I've been sold so many times where it's a really good
Mhm.
sales pitch and then nothing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I've been there many times. I get that. I totally get that. I want to talk a little more about the values alignment that you're mentioning. I love what you're saying about it and aligning with people who share the same values. But how can you really know? Because I think a lot of business owners, a lot of companies are great at projecting a certain image on their social media and on their website. And then once you really get in there, you start to realize that what they're portraying online is not actually who they are or how they run things on the inside. So what are some things that maybe you look for, or can you ever know if this is the right person? How do you do that?
Yeah, that's always tough. So one is going to you can always look up who the players are in a business. So if you're being sold something from XYZ company, look at that person's personal LinkedIn and their social profiles. So you can kind of get an
Yeah.
idea. So you can see if they line up with kind of your worldview from there. The other thing is the referrals. When you're talking to these people, ask about certain core value things that make sense. So if you are I'm very much into like sustainability and things, and that's a core value of yours. You want to make sure that their sustainability efforts are keeping up with what your core value is. So, for example, if you're very much into sustainability, but they're dumping oil into the ocean, you're probably going to have a values conflict. So,
Yeah.
digging in there, you're going to do that. Also, searching any kind of legal actions against this company. You're going to want to search lawsuits, see who's suing them and for what reasons.
Right.
Because there's online reviews, hit or miss sometimes, because even referrals are hit or miss. And I tell people this all the time. If somebody asks you for a referral, are you going to give them your best or are you going to give them your worst? No, you're going to give them your best. You're going to give them the people that are going to say good things about you. So
Mhm.
that referral is key, but you also have to know what questions to ask. Even that referral. One good question I ask all the time is, is there something that you wish they did differently or better?
Huh.
So yeah, and so it's not asking them, "Hey, what do they do bad?" But if you ask them, "Hey,
Right.
what do you wish they did differently or better?" They might say something like, "Oh, I really wish their communication process was better. They dropped a couple of balls." Well, if one of your core values is no ball dropping or whatever, then okay, we
Yeah.
might have a problem here.
Yeah. That's a great question. I love that. Now, burnout is really a huge issue for leaders. And what signs would you say that business leaders should be looking for in themselves so that they can recalibrate before it's too late and before they get themselves into burnout?
Yeah, one, look at your schedule. Are you starting too early? Are you stopping too late? So how long is your workday going? Because if you are starting way too early, if you're waking up and you're just immediately hitting the laptop or whatever you're doing, and you're working straight through, and then you hit dinner and then you're back at work, that's saying that you have some there. That's a red flag. So why is it? Are you unproductive? Do you have too much to do? Do you need to delegate? So long hours. That's going to be the first thing. Second is your internal state. So start looking. Are you becoming easily agitated now? Are you
Right.
hungry? Are you getting upset in traffic? Are there other things that's going on in your life that is reflecting back this sort of imbalance that you have? Everything in our world, especially our people, are just mirrors back to us. So when we react, people are just being people. The reaction and
Yeah.
the feelings and this person made me mad. No, they didn't. That
Mhm.
person did a thing that person does. The mad came from you. They did not put mad into you. The mad was already here. And so
Yeah.
that action just brought it up. So you have to look at that and go, okay, is that leading to burnout? So these sorts of like physical signs, and then obviously your health.
Mhm.
Let's talk about your sleep. Is that compromised because you're so much thinking about your business? I can't tell you how many times when I was on burnout and on the ragged edge of just burning everything down, I would wake up at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning and couldn't go back to sleep because my head is spinning. I have so many things going on inside of my head. And then I would just lay there in bed, terrified that I couldn't go back to sleep because I know I've got to work the next day or take the kids to school or something. And then how can I do this when I'm going to be absolutely exhausted? And so it starts
Yeah.
this vicious cycle. So these little indicators will definitely clue you in that you're on the edge of burnout.
What did you do when you found yourself in those states where you were either burnt out or on the verge of burnout? How did you course correct things?
Wow. So the first thing that I had to do was actually take a step back. And that's the hardest because what you want to do when you're in that burnout state, you're trying to grab all the plates and keep them spinning. You're trying to do all these things, and stepping back is the
Yeah.
last thing that you want to do. But it's the first thing that you need to do to get clarity. So for me, the big turning point was actually dumping everything onto paper. So everything in my head, I got out of my head because what
Mm.
happens is we create these open loops. And the open loop could be I need to pick up milk at the grocery store. I need to pay my rent bill for my commercial space. I need to order that thing from Amazon for that employee, or I need to write that
Yeah.
podcast script, the notes for it. You have all these things that are open loops in your head. And if you don't get them out of your head, then that's what's causing that to really just churn in there, and your brain is doing a phenomenal job of keeping you reminded, but it's spending so much energy doing that that it doesn't have the energy to do the other things, the things that actually get you to where you want to go. So first thing was just getting everything onto paper. That's every
Okay.
to do, every task, everything I could think of. And it takes hours. It takes so much time. And it is a difficult task. And
Yeah.
many people fail at it. Trust me, I failed the first like
Yep.
5 times I tried to do it because it's like you get 4 or 5 things down and you're just like, and squirrel. And then all of a sudden you start writing it down and you're like, oh yeah, I need to do that. And all of a sudden you're at the computer just mashing buttons, like trying to get it done. It's like,
Yeah.
that's not what we're doing. What I suggest doing, and it works, is you go get a legal pad and a pen and you go drive somewhere to a park somewhere where you have nothing, leave your phone in your car, and it's just you, a pen, and an illegal pad, and you write everything down. Because if you separate yourself from the technology, then you're not going to get distracted. You're not going to go, oh, well, wait a second. You're just going to have to force yourself to do it and to grind through it.
Yeah.
Um, because then once you get everything out, then you can start categorizing. And the categories that I like to use are, do, which means you're just going to do it, you're going to delegate it, or you're going to delete it. So delegating and deleting, two of my favorite things. Um,
Nice.
so if you delegate it, then you're going to have a plan for that. Do they know, you need to make sure you have a script and your format and your SOP, and then you can delegate it to somebody once they're properly trained. But the first thing for me was just getting everything out of my head and onto paper.
Yeah. I love that. And I love that suggestion to remove yourself from the technology, go out somewhere where you have to face it then, right? You have to do it. There's nothing else you can do. Great, great advice. When you look back now over the life of your business, and I know you've had a couple different businesses, what's a lesson that you had to learn the hard way and that you wish every business owner knew from the start?
I would say it's going to sound cliche, but it is literally hire slow, fire fast. And
Okay.
what I mean is the people that you're bringing into your organization, a lot of times we have several different things that go through an entrepreneur's mind. At least they went through my mind. And it was one is I just need somebody to help. So you put out these job ads, and especially if you're a smaller company or whatnot, you're
Yeah.
not going to get the response because people are going to be like, I don't know if I want to work for, some random small company, or you don't have the reach because they want these things. And you don't have the ability to start out somebody, hey, we're going to start you out at 130,000 with full medical benefits and all of these things.
Right.
When you're starting in the beginning, it can't be as attractive. So you have to start with a story. You have to find the right people that want to come alongside you and help you build something. And
Okay.
so in the beginning that may not be a lot of money that you can put to them, but maybe there's other things that interest them. Maybe it's a flexible schedule, maybe it's for most people what they want. They just want to be part of something awesome. And if you can show
Yeah.
them that you're doing something awesome, while the money today may not make sense, if you have the right person, then they can help build that out. So by finding that right
Okay.
person and taking that time, especially early on, your first couple of hires, that's going to be super critical. Unless it's somebody as simple as I just need an office manager, then just go find the best office manager that you can find for the money that you can afford. But make sure that you take the time and you just don't pick the first decent one in an interview.
Yeah.
I'm just going through the list of employees that I've had over the years that I made that same mistake. I just
Mhm.
went in and I was like, "Yes, you're great." And it wasn't so much like, "Oh, you have a pulse and whatnot." Like your resume looked good, but I didn't dig in because I think I didn't want to mess up a good thing. Like, "Oh, this person's great." I don't want to go
Right.
look at their references because what if what if I find something that's just bad or something? And I don't think
Yeah.
consciously I'm thinking that, but I think subconsciously is like, oh, I'm a good judge of character. I don't need to call their references. No, you need to you need to call their references, but you need to also
Mhm.
call their jobs that they worked in the past and ask them all the tough questions. Now, they may not be able to answer them. In the United States, we have very specific employee laws that if we say certain things, then we could get sued, that sort of thing. But there's no rules that
Right.
say you can't ask the question. So you can ask the question, the person could choose not to answer. If asking questions such as, did they have a good attitude? Did they meet their goals? Did they miss deadlines? What were their strengths? If you could do something over, what could you do differently? And then go from there. So if you hire slow and you take that time and you do that background and then you onboard them properly and then you
Yeah.
train them properly and then you mentor them properly, that's going to be the change. So you don't have to drag it on. And then firing fast, what I mean by that is, when somebody's not going to work out. And a lot of times, and again, I'm like
Yeah.
this, I just want the best in everybody. And I hate to let somebody go and just go, because I'm thinking about it from their perspective of, how would you like to start a job and then like 30 or 60 or 90 days later, you're fired because it didn't work out. Well,
Yeah.
if you're doing your job as a leader and you're keeping them apprised and you're having like a 30, 60, and 90-day review and you're meeting, they're going to know that they're not hitting the metrics.
Right.
So you're able to let them go a lot faster, because I think of a situation, I hired an ops manager and I knew in the first like 3 weeks that they weren't going to make it.
Okay.
But I had already invested so much like recruiting and hiring this position, and I was like, "Okay, I'm just gonna give this person one more chance, one more chance, one more chance." And it just wasn't working,
Yeah.
wasn't working. And it went on for 3 months and then finally let him go. And then it was great. We tell these stories in our head about what it's gonna be, and
Mhm.
I think that really messes us up. So that hire slow, and then all of that stuff that comes along with making sure that that employee is set up for success is absolutely critical. That's the one thing that I
Yeah.
wish that I would have known, because the employees, that is the piece, because these are the people that are in your business that are executing your vision as the owner, and they have needs and wants and desires, and they're people. And I think as business owners, a lot of times we kind of miss out on that. As much silly as that sounds, we
Yeah.
dehumanize our employees as just workers, and we don't realize that they have personal stuff going on. They have belief systems. They have their trauma and their stuff that they're bringing along. And you as a leader kind of have to work with that and help them through it.
Absolutely. Are you ready to turn your passion into a podcast, but you're not sure where to start? Imagine going from idea to launching your own podcast in just 5 days. Yep, that's 5 days. Join me for the 5-day Launch Your Podcast Challenge. I've designed this challenge to take you step by step from concept to launch. You'll learn everything from defining your podcast vision to the technical side of recording. And the best part? You get direct support from me every day on live coaching calls. I've been where you are and I know what it takes, and now I'm a top 1% podcast host. So if you're ready to share your voice with the world, this challenge is your perfect starting point. You'll be joining a vibrant community of like-minded creators, and together we'll make your podcasting dreams come true. Spaces are limited because I'm committed to providing personalized support. So don't wait. Sign up now and let's get your podcast off the ground. So if someone listening in the audience has built a decent business but feels stuck in getting to that next level, what's the single best piece of advice that you would offer them right now?
Clarifying what you're stuck on, because stuck is really just a lack of clarity. I found that when I was stuck all the time, it's because I wasn't clear on where I wanted to go. And so in order for
Right.
me to get clarity, and again, it's as simple as just writing it down and just
Hmm.
asking and just really kind of ruminating and meditating on things like, what do I want out of life? Like, what do I
Yeah.
actually want? And people get stuck because they're like I said, they're not clear because they're not clear on what they want. Like, for example, I started my business thinking that I just wanted to make money. It was like, okay, I want to make money. I don't want to be stuck in a job. That was kind of the first thing. So I
Right.
got my graduate degree. I was working an IT job, and then I realized I just didn't like working for people. I've had so many jobs. In my adult years,
Uh,
my tenure has gotten longer. So, I'll stay at a place like 5 years. I haven't had a job since 2020, but I would stay, at a place about 5 years, and then I would just reach my threshold, and not my threshold of capacity or capability. It was my capacity for putting up with their garbage and their stuff, and just,
yeah.
or me not being able to flesh out my ideas in their environment, which, guess what? It's their environment. It's not for me to flesh out my ideas. So I was like, in order for me to do this, I've got to go create my own thing. And so
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I want to make my own decisions. I want to make my own money. I don't want to be, under the control of somebody else. I don't want to listen to a boss. It was kind of my thought. And so that's when I stepped in and started this business. Well, that's really not why I started my business or anything. I wasn't clear. I started my business because I wanted freedom of time and freedom of decisions. And so
Yeah.
that was my clarity. That's how and it took me a long time to get there. And the other people that you may resonate with that right away. You're like, yes, this is exactly what I want. For other people, what they want is they want world peace. They want things,
Mm,
and I say world peace, and I don't mean that like flippantly. I mean they literally just want the world to be a better place, and
yeah.
that's what they want. And trust me, I want the world to be a better place too. But on a personal level, that's what I want. Some people on a personal level, all they want is they just want to be able to spend more time with their kids,
Yeah.
and that's what they want. So you really have to dig into your why. And it's, Simon Sinek wrote a whole book on it, like, find your why, but it's not as easy as you would think. So that's what I had to do is I had to find out exactly my why. So when you're stuck, it's finding out exactly what you're wanting to do, and getting clear on that will help you get unstuck, because at least it'll let you to see
Yeah.
what your next baby step is.
Do you think that sometimes business owners think that they should want something that they don't want? Like, for example, they think, well, I started this business, so I guess I have to grow it to being a multi-million dollar company because that's what I'm supposed to do. But maybe that's not even, so they think that they're stuck where they are because they're not getting there, but maybe they don't even want it. Maybe they just want
Exactly.
a nice business that pays the bills, gives them a couple good vacations a year, and that they enjoy.
Oh, yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that if that's exactly
Yeah.
what you want. The problem that most people have is that they start adopting other people's goals and other people's
Right.
dreams. And when you adopt somebody else's goals and dreams, because you hear somebody like Tony Robbins or Dan Martell or somebody get up and they're just like, hey man, yeah, I want to have this private jet, or I want to have this thing, or whatever it is. And you go, yeah, that
Yeah.
sounds great. Maybe that's not what you want. Maybe like you said, maybe the first thing that you want is just to be able to take a vacation every year. And maybe
Yeah.
that's the one thing you want. And then that's fine. Go do that. Create a business that will do that. And then what you're going to find is you're going to start wanting more and different things. But
Yeah.
they're your things. These are things that you want. Don't Dan Martell's dreams. Don't chase Tony Robbins' dreams. Those are their dreams. And if you try to chase their
Absolutely.
dreams, you're going to try to be them in order to chase their dreams, because and I've seen this countless times, and it's almost comical at this point, where I see somebody like start to put on an online presence and they're
Yeah.
imitating somebody. And I'm
Yes.
like, I mean, I get it, cuz I've done that. When I first started like getting into like trying to do a podcast and things like that, what's interesting is I was going through my personal business and looking at
Mhm.
like subscriptions and things like that. It's something that I do once a quarter just to see what we're spending money on. And I noticed
Yeah.
a Riverside subscription from a year ago. And I just
Wow.
launched my podcast, a few weeks ago, and
Yeah.
and I was like, "Man, I I was not clear. What was I doing?" So when you start to just look at the things that you're putting together, if you have clarity around that and you have a plan, that's where the action happens. But if you take other people's ideas, and I'm sure what happened was somebody started a podcast and I was like, that's awesome. I'm going to start a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And then I get a Riverside subscription and I, maybe try. I don't even think I know for a fact I didn't record one episode like of my own podcast. So I don't even know what I was doing with the Riverside link. But but really it's because I was trying to be somebody else. I was trying to do something for somebody else, and authenticity, it, being authentically you is where it's at. But where most people come off the rails is they don't think their story's good enough. They don't think they're
Yeah.
good enough. They don't. And guess what, folks? You're the only one with your story.
Mm-hmm.
So you're a one out of one, an N of one. So that's,
Yeah.
you have to tell your story that way because if you're telling somebody else's story, subconsciously people can just feel it. They're just like, this doesn't feel good, you know? And
Absolutely.
what's weird and what hit it home for me is, I speak publicly a lot, do like workshops and things like that. And we talk about business. And I did one last August at a convention I've spoken at for years. And one of the people came up to me and they were like, man, this is different. And they said, this felt like the most authentic I've ever heard you speak. And I was like,
Oh,
I was like, oh, thank you so much. And then afterwards, I'm like thinking about it and I was like, man, because I finally just got up there and I was like, I'm going to stop trying to be anybody other than who I am. And if you like me, great. If you don't like me, that's fine too. Not everybody's going to like me. And I got to be
yeah.
okay with that.
Yeah, definitely. You almost have to go through that though before you find your authentic voice and before you can speak authentically is you almost have to go through that cringy time of trying on different people's voices and trying to
Hmm.
be Tony Robbins on stage until you find that, hey, being yourself on stage is exactly what the audience wants. Do you
Hmm.
find that?
Yes. And it's okay. I think that maybe that's part
Yeah.
of the growing process is you just have to experience it. And like you said, yeah, I will tell you, it is way easier to be yourself on stage than
Oh,
anybody else
100%.
because you don't have to
Yeah.
think about it. You're just you. And if you goof up, that's okay. And you're going to
Yeah.
roll off of that goof up a lot better because you're just like, well, that happened. Instead of trying to, oh, I have this image that I'm trying to present to these hundreds of people out there. And if I break this image, then all of a sudden I'm a fraud.
Right.
And and of course, because you are,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
I was,
definitely. Yeah.
getting up there and trying to teach on something that I didn't have mastery about, or trying
Mhm.
to educate somebody on an idea that I hadn't fully fleshed out, or something that sounded good, or to talk on um, a podcast. I was on, been guests on podcasts for a while, and
Yeah.
if there's a subject where it's like, oh, I feel like I could answer this, it just doesn't. It's not as authentic if you've been through the fire.
Definitely. And now, speaking of podcasts, you've recently launched your own podcast, Forge House.
Yeah,
And that was after taking my 5-day Launch Your Podcast challenge. So,
yeah.
can you share with us a bit about what inspired you to start your show and how has that experience of launching your podcast been for you?
First, it has been great. So I loved the course because it actually gave me everything I needed to get it done myself.
Yeah.
And so I would say what inspired me to do it was actually probably just taking the course. And it was also the challenge of knowing, okay, I've got to get this done or else it's never going to get done. And being
Yeah.
okay with the first ones being not perfect and being okay with being bad because your first podcast is going to be bad. Your first time you try to do a workout, it's going to be bad. The first time you try to bake sourdough bread, trust me, I know it's going to be bad.
Yes.
But people don't want to go through the bad to get to the good. They just want the good. It's like, oh, I want
Yeah.
to launch a podcast and I want it to be perfect. Well, that's probably not going to happen unless you have been speaking, publicly for years and you've got these certain things. And even then, podcast is a completely different format. It's like taking a podcaster, and I've seen this happen. They take a podcaster and put them up on stage, and they don't know what to do, and they are out of their element, and they're just like, ah, and they're like,
Yeah.
okay, well, because the first time you speak on stage, guess what? It's going to be bad.
Yep.
So it's getting through that. For me, it was going through the course and then just going, okay, I've got to get this done. I've got to get it out. And I loved the time constraint that you put in there because it forced action and it forced somebody like me. It's like, oh well, I can't wait, a month because I thought, oh, I'll have like a month to launch this podcast and everything's gonna be fine. And it was like, no, the fire's on, but it's good because what it's going to do is it forced me to get some reps under my belt and to get it
Yeah.
out there. Even if, I know my first episodes are not, I would say are bad. They're not bad,
They're not
but they're
bad.
not great. They're not great. They're not what this podcast is going to be in 2 years, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but you have to grow. It's kind of like everybody wants this picture, but they don't want to go through the birthing process and the growing up
Mhm.
process. If you relate it to like children, you go through a lot of stuff to get this child on the other end. Or like my kids are now 21, 16, and 18, and we had to go through a lot to for them to be like responsible adults now. And same
Yeah.
thing is for anything that you're creating, is it's going to have to grow up. It's going to have to mature. The first ones, yeah, not gonna be great, but you at least have to get them out.
Yeah. And I would say, because I've listened to all of your episodes so far, and they're fantastic.
I
So
appreciate that.
they're definitely far greater than just not bad. You're doing great work. It's
Thank
a
you.
great show.
Thanks. Well, I'm just all I'm doing is I'm just giving, talking about my stab wounds and my cuts and
Yeah.
scrapes and bruises and the things that I learned, because if I can help somebody shortcut their journey, I wanna do
Mhm.
it because I didn't have this when I first started, my entrepreneurship journey. Like, there was one podcast, and this guy was putting it out, and it's now, it's dead and gone. It's been gone for a while, and
Yeah.
I listened to this thing every day. He did an episode, like, every day, and it was like 10
Uh,
minutes, but that's all I had, and now we're I think in a bit of a different age now where information is at our fingertips, but the other side of it is you have to know how to suss out the good from the bad. And
Absolutely.
yeah, and just
Yeah.
and with anything that anybody's saying, if you agree with somebody 100%, I I would have a problem with that. Just as like if you disagree with somebody 100%, because there are people out there that they look at
Yeah.
somebody and they go, everything this person says is pure evil and wrong. And I'm like, a broken clock is right twice
Yeah.
a day. So maybe not
Exactly.
everything. And then the opposite is like this person can do no wrong. Everything they say is perfect. I'm like, you might have a bias issue here.
Yeah.
So if either way, just listen, take what you can from somebody, and then move on.
Yeah. Great advice. And what would you say to other business owners who are maybe thinking about starting a podcast but feel intimidated to start?
Just do it. You have to craft your story, and your story is going to touch people that other people cannot reach. Your voice is going to resonate with a group of people. Now, you might think, well, a million people aren't going to listen to me. Of course not. No, a million people aren't going to listen to you today, but maybe 10
Right.
will, maybe
Yeah.
20, maybe 30. And then you just start building that little community of people. You're going to get
Mhm.
better at your voice. You're going to learn how to communicate your thoughts in a way that makes sense, and you're going to
Yeah.
get better as long as you listen to it. It's a workout, and
Mhm.
it's training. The problem most people encounter, and I encountered this for years because I've tried to do a bunch of different things, is you try something and you're not really good at it at first, so you just give it up. This is why most people don't play the clarinet. You
Right.
try it, and it's like, "That's terrible," and then you don't continue on. Oh, it took me years to get okay at the guitar, and so you have to be willing to do that and put in the work, and think
Yeah.
of it kinda like if you're listening to this and you're like, "I think I might wanna start a podcast," think about when you had that same thought of going, "I think I might wanna start a business." Okay. Look at your first few months in business. What did that look like?
Yeah.
Your first couple years? Are you sad that you did it? Probably not if you still have your business. And if you are sad, then, let's get you unstuck. But
Yeah.
if you're looking back going, okay, yeah, that was okay, then just start the podcast. I would say definitely jump on your challenge. That's the best because
Thanks.
it gives you all the resources. I mean, literally you go through most people what they get hung up on is the tech. And they're just like, I don't even know how to put a podcast. So that was a real quick and easy, lesson on just go here, here, here. Here's the resources. Here's the ones that I found that work. You're willing to use, you could use these.
Yeah.
I didn't have as much luck with that. So all of that is brilliant. And then what are you going to talk about? And that's the next thing
Mm,
people are always worried about. Well, what am I going to talk about? What have you been through? You
yeah.
know, your mess is your message. So, what are the things that you've struggled with that you've overcome? Now, as a business owner, you may be sitting there going, well, my business is okay, but man, I overcame this thing. I overcame a TBI, or I overcame
Yeah.
PTSD, or I overcame this other thing. And this is how it helped me as a business owner. So you could have a niche that is absolutely nothing to do with your core business line, but is something that you've been through that's battle tested that you can talk about all day. And
Absolutely.
yeah, just find that one thing that you could talk about for 15 minutes unprompted. That's
Perfect.
what you talk
Great.
about.
Great advice. And now you have a free offer for the audience listening. Do you want to tell them a bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was looking at like how can I provide something that would be the most helpful for entrepreneurs,
Yeah.
I came up with this thing called a 30-day reset guide. And basically what it is, it's a guide that it gives you an inspirational quote to start the day. It's 15 minutes. You do this first thing in the morning. You're going to have a very quick affirmation that is not like your Stuart Smalley, like and doggone it, people like me, but it's an actual like good affirmation. Then we go through a journaling prompt and meditation. So we want to get you kind of getting your thoughts onto paper. And then also the meditation is guided meditation. If you're just download the book, you just read it. You just put on some instrumental music in the background, something light, and then you just read through this meditation and just sit with your thoughts. It doesn't have to be anything crazy, and it's 15 minutes. And we also do a breathing exercise. So every
Great.
day, so there's a different breathing exercise every day. There's a different journal prompt. There's a different meditation. So there's a custom meditation. So you get 30 custom meditations, 30 custom journaling prompts, and then 30 affirmations and 30 different breathing exercises. And that's all free.
Great.
Yeah, just jjmaynard.com. And then you'll see a button right there that says, get the book, and it's the 30-day reset guide. Just go there, download it. And that's
Perfect.
there for your listeners just to help get that clarity around kind of what your internal rhythm should be. Because for me, that
Yeah.
was the biggest reset, was calming the chatter that was happening in my head.
Yeah.
And then once you can do
Absolutely.
that, then the other things, we'll talk about the other things as we kind of, progress through the ecosystem. Like what should my pricing look like? What should my first hire
Mhm.
be like? Your normal, typical business questions.
Yeah.
But for me, I found was not effective in business until I was regulated internally. And
Yep.
so that's my first thing I have for people is help you to at least get that habit going 15 minutes a day.
Nice.
And then you dig into like Joe Dispenza's stuff and dig into other resources,
Yeah.
but this will help you at least build that foundation, especially if you're like me, coming from a hyper masculine, like kind of world, and then going, somebody telling me, you really need to meditate. And I was like, I'm going to meditate your face right now, because I was just in that space. And then really going, okay, well, let me just try it. Because I had a moment where I had tried everything else, Terry, and nothing worked.
Yeah.
I was so in my head and didn't know it. I had so much stuff built in and built up, and I was miserable. I was the person you would see, punching their steering wheel, in their car, and just
Wow.
I was not, I was just an angry person. And I wasn't angry to the public. but I would easily get triggered. Somebody would say something, and then that would
Yeah.
bring in my sense of unworthiness, and that, that child, that little boy that just wanted to be hugged and said, "It's okay." I didn't know that person existed. People talk about your inner child and whatnot, and I didn't have a good
Yeah.
understanding of what that was. But, you know, looking back now, it was like, no, I was just wounded, and I was just crying out for somebody just to comfort me, and I didn't know what that meant. So
Yeah.
going through this meditation and this, it just gets you in a place where it just kind of opens your mind a little bit more so that you can be aware that that one exists, and two, that it's very helpful.
Absolutely. And now I have some rapid fire questions for you if you're
Yeah.
ready for it. Okay. What's your favorite book or favorite book to recommend?
My favorite book to recommend right now, Danny Lear's Win Your Next Hour, is fantastic. So that he's a new author, just produced this book. It is fantastic. He tells story. He was a weightlifter, so a
Okay.
bodybuilder, and did competitive Olympic like weightlifting, and worked out with a lot of Olympians. And he tells these stories about how you can just push yourself to accomplish these goals. So win that next hour.
Cool.
Love that book.
Oh, I'm gonna have to check it out. I haven't heard of it before. What's your favorite food?
I love Thai food.
Me too.
Oh, yeah.
Nice. Biggest pet peeve.
My biggest pet peeve is people who don't do what they say they're gonna do.
Good one. Good one. Who inspires you?
So many people, the big names like Dan Martell, anybody that has accomplished something, that has overcome a lot of obstacles. I
Yeah.
think of Myron Goldman. I think of, his friend Josh Latimer, a good friend of mine, a mentor of mine, that just, born in a trailer park, had a window cleaning business, and then now does very well, and it just overcame adversity.
Good. What are three things you take with you to a deserted island?
My wife and children.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's my wife and children. I mean, I
Nice.
don't yeah, I don't think that there's anything else. Like, everything else we can find. Yeah.
Perfect. Great answer. Who's a celebrity you'd like to have dinner with, dead or alive?
I would like to have dinner with David Diane Fisher.
Yeah?
Don't know if you know who he is.
No.
He was an English actor and is now philosopher.
Cool.
His philosophy is amazing. He wrote a book called The Map, another one I would highly suggest, talks about inner work.
Nice.
Just a tremendous guy.
Oh, I'm gonna have to check him out too. And what is your go-to karaoke song?
Probably The Highwayman. I do a lot of karaoke.
Oh, nice.
Oh, I
Love
do so
that.
much karaoke. Yeah, me and my daughter, we like to sing the prayer, so I like that, and then, yeah, just so many yacht rock type songs. Yeah.
Cool. And finally, what's a question that you would like to pass on to the next guest without knowing who they are?
I would say my question to them is, what is one thing that you found that changed your perspective in a way that you were not expecting? So
Nice.
you expected one outcome but got something completely different, but it was profoundly impactful.
Great question. And any final words that you'd like to leave the audience with?
I would say a better business begins with a better you.
Perfect.
That's the tagline I've used on my podcast. That internal and self-regulation, the way that we look at things, the way that we deal with ourselves comes out, and how we deal with everybody else and how we make them feel.
Yeah,
And it is priceless.
absolutely. Great, great final words. Thank you so much for being here today, Jonathan. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me on.
Make sure that you check Jonathan's links out in the show notes. And if you were inspired by his podcast story and you've been thinking about launching your own podcast, don't wait. Check out my 5-day Launch Your Podcast Challenge. It's the same program that helped Jonathan bring Forge House to life. In just 5 days, you will go from idea to launch ready with all the tools, tips, and strategies you need to create a show that you are proud of. So join the challenge. The link is in the show notes. And remember, your voice and message deserve to be heard. And as always, if you enjoyed this episode today, make sure you share it with one person who you think would benefit from listening to this episode. Thank you so much for being here today. Have a great week, my friends, and I will see you again soon.